Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter, metaphysical teacher, spiritual life and business coach, published author, and the high priestess of the LightWeb, a spiritual technology that will change your life. This is the place to be to talk everything under the LightWeb, from consciousness, relationships, to money, to spiritual business, and everything in between. Hi, it's another episode here of Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter. And today on my $1 Million Lab series, I am joined by the beautiful Emily Wilcox. Hello, Emily. Come and a warm welcome.
Thank you, Joanna. I'm so happy to be here.
Tell people who you are and what it is that you do in this world. What are you up to in this world?
Yeah. So, my favorite titles are money magnetizer and business coach. Hasn't always been that way. I'm very multifaceted. I'm a manifesting generator in human design. So if you know anything about that, we like to have our hands in different things. I really got my business chops growing to 7-figure businesses. One was an e-commerce business and one was, a more traditional marketing agency. And to be completely frank, I did both of those from wounded masculine energy. So it was all about the hustle, the working hard, my worth is on the line, so I better prove it kind of an energy. And then in parallel, working on my mindset and kind of doing my inner work around money and what I was making it mean about me, either having it or the lack thereof. And so through the process of building these businesses, I just fell more and more in love with the inner work and ultimately took a step back from those businesses, which are still running to this day, but we've got team in place that takes care of the vast majority of the day-to-day so that I can focus my energy on working with other women entrepreneurs, helping, to coach them in their business and in their life and help unblock money from them.
I love that. I love that you've gotten teams in on your business. So a little bit about my story is that I basically built 4 6-figure, multiple 6 figures from scratch. I built all 4 businesses together, one on top of the other.
So you know what I'm talking about here.
I know the hustle. I wore the crown of a queen of hustlers. I hustled very hard in my businesses right up until I hit a huge burnout. Yeah. And I love that you've recognized this way of working, the way that you used to work is just not sustainable, right? Yeah. It's a big thing that we talk about inside the $1 Million Experiment. We talk quite often about how, it is not a sustainable energy. It is a great business plan for the first few months of your business when you're really excited, but long term, the sustainability of that is not good. And I love that you've made the ability to not only pivot, but pivot and keep your businesses. For me, I shut my other businesses down. I kept only my spiritual events company, because it was so flexible and it was such a flexible business, and I was able to keep that. But the other ones, I was just like, because I had brick and mortar businesses, I had shop and I had a cafe, and I had a designer shoe shop and just 3 designer clothing boutiques. So shutting all that down was, that was the difficult moves and things like that. But I love that you've been able to transition and keep, but then to follow your passion and into that coaching world and the mindset, which obviously became a passion of yours, because that's exactly what happened with me. I mean, I began using the mindset to literally heal myself from where I was. Yeah. And then was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do, because it was just so transformative. And I was like, all day, every day, this is what I want to work with.
Yes.
And it's huge. It's such a huge, talk a little bit about your story, that transition, because I mean, it is that evolution and growth, isn't it? It's not an overnight thing where we make that transition so quickly, is it?
Yeah, it's so true. And it's the timing of this is interesting because I don't know when this will air, but you and I are recording it in October 2021. And I was just thinking last night because about a year ago at this exact time, I was flying to Nashville, Tennessee, um, in the midst of a pandemic where there was no vaccine at the time, to go speak on a stage live in front of about 70 or 80 people with another 200 live streaming. And it was a very masculine energy mastermind that I was in. And they invited me to speak at one of the events. And it was a full body yes. I knew I wanted to do it. So I trusted that, even though I also was scared and felt like I was maybe risking my health a little bit by doing that. And what was so interesting is that I was in that mastermind to grow our marketing agency. We help brands sell more on Amazon. Now, that's not a topic that would make sense for even like 1% of that audience. But my coach and mentor who asked me to speak, I just said yes. And I thought he was putting me on a panel, so I would just be able to talk about my experience in the mastermind. And he goes, no, you're going to have about, 90 minutes for this keynote. And I was thinking that you should speak about, how to build a business doing what you love. And I was like, oh, okay. So what happened was I really had to take all of the spiritual and inner work and the things that I had been doing kind of in parallel and then applying to my business and really make that the topic. And I was like guided by spirit to like put a visualization into this, which I resisted. I was like, I cannot lead a visualization to this group of 20-year-old bros, And of course, they ended up crying and just having the most transformative experiences. But I felt like, Joanna, that at that event, a seed was planted. And I did not understand how or when it was going to grow and what the harvest was going to look like. I just intuitively felt like, okay, something happened here. Like this was transformative for me as well. And I had people coming up to me after, like saying, how powerful that session was for them and saying like, so you do this for a living, right? And I was like, no, I run an Amazon sales agency. And they're like, huh? Like it made no sense. They're like, no, you should be doing this. And so I, received that with thanks. But again, it just felt like, okay, a seed, that's it. Fast forward to end of December 2020. And I was in Sedona, Arizona, which if you know anything about Sedona.
I've been, it's beautiful. It's so gorgeous.
Yes, it's a beautiful place. And it's also widely considered to be, a very spiritual place.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's like a real spiritual mecca with all if you've never been to Arizona, it's got all these amazing vortexes of energy in it. It's so incredible.
Yes. So I went with our families went. So it was my husband and 2 kids and then one other family. And this is like one of my besties. And we love to do like all the woo-woo stuff together. So we were like, okay, we're going to be in Sedona. Let's make sure we hike through some of the vortexes. And we had someone come to do like in-home massage and energy healing. And so I was getting this massage. The first, I don't know, probably hour was just massage and it was fantastic. And then she starts talking and kind of like opening up the channel and saying things. And none of it was resonating. I was like pretty disappointed. I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. Maybe I should have just booked the massage. But even though the words she was saying weren't resonating, all of a sudden the thought dropped into my mind, you need to take a month off of work. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I'm just going to set that to the side and, see what happens with that. And so for the next few days, the thought wouldn't go away, which I was hoping it would. It wasn't getting stronger either, but I was just kind of sitting with it. I'm like, how is this going to work? In the US, the 2 weeks between like Christmas and New Year's, that's our biggest holiday of the year, right? So I'm already off of work for 2 weeks. Normally in January, I like to like hit the ground running. I love that kind of fresh New Year's energy. I'm like, how am I going to roll into January and just take a month off? And how do I tell my husband, who is a partner in this business, who's going to feel abandoned by this declaration? Mind you, I also am conditioned as an Enneagram 3, meaning that I find so much of my worth through achievement and doing. This is something that I've really worked on healing and coming to a balanced place with it. But the idea of not working for a month felt really scary. There was nothing about that was like, oh, great, cool, vacation, Netflix and
completely
chill.
out of your comfort zone.
Yes. And as I tuned in, I really got further clarification that no, it should be 6 weeks, not 4. So one of the intentions that I had set for the new year, even though we were still in end of December, was that I really wanted to let my soul lead the way. So I had been in meditation, every day saying, speak and I will listen, lead and I will follow. And I really wanted to make it a soul-led year. And so here I was getting this direction. And even though it felt really scary, I was like, I cannot not listen. I've made this inner commitment and I have to listen. And so, I approached my husband about it. I held space for him to have his feelings around, abandonment and everything else. And I took 6 weeks to really step back. I can't say honestly that I did nothing during those 6 weeks, but it was a big step back from both companies, particularly our agency, because that's the one where I was in the role of CEO and we have a big team. And, that was taking up all of my time. And I thought at the time that during those 6 weeks that it was something wanted to be birthed. I was like, it's like a birth. It's inconvenient. It makes you stop everything, but something wants to come through. And I thought
discomfort is excruciating at times, right?
Yes. And so I thought that it would result in some idea coming through for our agency. However, 2 things happened. Number 1 was the ideas that were coming through for the agency were more like how to get it operating on its own. So I kind of channeled this financial model for us to be looking at and following. I got guidance around someone on our team that needed to be promoted into an operations position. And as the weeks were going by, I was actually feeling less and less aligned to that business. So I thought that I was going to be chomping at the bit to go back. And the opposite was happening. And yet nothing was really filling the void that I felt. And I started getting a whisper of coaching, taking what you already do, what you already love, the things that you would want to be talking about if your dearest friend came over and you were hanging out outside by the fire, make that the thing. And so that was the beginning of it. Because your question, and I know this is a very long story of an answer, but your question was how do you make the transition? And that was really what it looked like for me. And then it slowly built from there. It was turning down the dial on the other 2 businesses and turning up the dial on coaching. Because at that time, I didn't even know what I wanted to coach on. I started having feelings of, imposter syndrome around doing it. But just little by little, I knew that that was where I needed to invest my time and energy. And of course, now I look back and it's like, oh, it's only been 6 months and I have like a full-fledged coaching business. I have clients. I've run 2 in-person retreats. You know,
I love that you told us that you had imposter syndrome, because I'm like, hello, you built 2 7-figure businesses and here you are like starting out as a coach with like such like amazing, track record, but little imposter goes, hello.
yes,
And you're like, oh my God, right? Because
yes,
but I love that, because I think, this is what's real with business, right? It's like the real face of business. Like you can achieve so much. You can achieve building a 7-figure business. You can achieve all these things. And yet you can follow your heart's desire and still the imposter shows up. And I
yes,
feel like that's so poignant and powerful, because I think a lot of people think, well, I must be doing it wrong when that imposter shows up.
right.
And it's saying to the imposter, thank you very much for your input, but we're not gonna hide under the duvet and eat chocolate ice cream today. No, in fact, we're actually going to take on the world and do the thing that we wanted to do. And I think, it's like carrying on despite that. And I think we can hold both of those contexts, both of those paradigms can be held. We can hear that imposter say, thank you very much for your opinion, but here's what we're going to do. And I love that someone like you can experience the imposter, because I think there's this idea that when you start really, really growing your business and stuff like that, people think, oh, but she must have her shit together at the next level, and
Right.
be extra like confident. And actually, you know what? Often knees knocking, palms sweating, we're doing the thing, really, really
Yes.
worried and scared, and to take the step and the pivot and all of the things. It doesn't really change. You just get better at navigating stuff like that. And that's something that I really want to teach people within the $1 million community, because it's like there's no better time to start than now. And you're going to go in scared, and halfway through you might still be scared in places, and really you might achieve your goal and you might still be scared.
Yes. Yeah, it's so true. Like it doesn't fully go away. And for many of us, when we're stepping into this next phase of the journey, we're desiring to build a more feminine energy business. And that feels different, and so for me, it did feel a little more wobbly, because what I was used to was treating myself like a workhorse. And that just was no longer an option, not only because I didn't want it, but it's like you're a jockey on a racehorse, and you used to be able to, in that final stretch, pull out the whip and be like, okay, come on. And that would be the thing that would get the horse to go faster at the end. And it's like, I pull out the whip now and my soul is just like, no, like you can't, my human like will not be motivated that way anymore. And so it's disorienting, because it's like the thing that used to work doesn't work anymore. And you're being called into more trust and surrender, and, more of a co-creative relationship. And it's like the positive in that is it's really beautiful. It's really aligned. It doesn't feel like draining work. The shadow side of it is you can spend a lot of time questioning yourself, being like, what am I doing? What if I'm just leaning back and trusting and that nothing's actually happening?
And it's a huge, and one of the things that I have found, especially if we have found, especially if you have done it in a way that both we have done it, which is through the hustle. We know the hustle, we know that it works. If you hustle hard, it does work. It's something that I've not shied away from inside the experiment. Like I think I said that on the opening call for people, is that you could do this in one of two ways. You could hustle your way to your goal, or we could do it in the way that we're going to teach you in the experiment, which is in ease, joy, and flow.
Yeah.
And that way, when you actually get to your goal, at least you'll have a quality of life to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Whereas with the hustle, there's rarely the quality of life to go with the achievements that you have. And, you know, and I feel like it's so point. I love that very visual, like getting the whip out. And, you know, that's what used to work. And now it's kind of like that just makes you feel like you've died a little bit in the inside just to even feel like that. And I love that progression, because I think a lot of people at this time in the world are going through some form of awakening. They're going through some form of, and in a way, without sounding too heavy or too dramatical, they're going through some type of death. An old way is dying, and a new way is emerging. And that in that death is very vulnerable making. It's very confusing, because you're like, what now? I got nothing. Like, what now? I have nothing. And that feeling, and it's redefining, it's standing on the edge of that, what now? I got nothing, and redefining what the thing is, because you know what the old thing was, but everything in your body goes, ugh, I do not want to do it that way.
Yeah.
I want to do it in a new way. And it's learning, it's like relearning a new language. The language of your soul, and learning to speak that fluently so that we can connect with our life. But the cool thing is that not only can we do this, but we can do this without hustle. We can do it in the vibes of ease, joy, and flow. We can do this building massive businesses and redefining wealth for women everywhere. Which is the thing that really excites me. I mean, that has me springing out of bed in the morning. Just the idea and the thoughts of this is that, look at the legacy that we can leave other women when we create quality of life with epic results. And that's one of the, you know, the big premises behind our experiment is to create conscious millionaires, awake millionaires that want to do good in the world with the resource of money, not where money is the be end and all of their existence, which is very much, I feel, from the hustle. Yeah. But where money is just a byproduct of being so in alignment with everything. Yeah. Tell us how that's looking now, because we've been 6 months into this new business that you're building. You sound like you've achieved loads, like retreats and all things. This sounds amazing. Tell us about what that looks like now in your business and your sort of day-to-day, how your day shifted, because obviously kudos to you to have the other businesses, because that's beautiful that you've got that and you've brought the teams in to run that. I want to ask two questions here, so we're going to segue. But the first question was it difficult to bring in teams to transition people into extracting yourself from the other businesses? Because I know that it can be very hard outsourcing and hiring people. I know for me, that's been one of my biggest challenges in my current business. I've got a wonderful team, but I was the problem. I didn't like people playing with my toys.
Yeah. So we already had a team. So it wasn't like I had to go out and hire people. And I've been on the wild roller coaster of hiring and firing and such, you know, over the last 3 years. So I felt good about the team that we had in place. What I realized, and this was something that came up during my 6-week sabbatical, was the question of, if you desire freedom, which for me, freedom is like my number one core value, why have you built a business that requires so much of you? And when I really sat with that question, I realized that it had everything to do with my own feelings of significance. I wanted to feel very significant. I wanted to have a seat at the table when every important decision was being made. So this was the the unhealed part of my masculine energy where I liked to have control. I at least liked to have a say. I liked my own ideas a lot. And so although I had a team and a happy team and a team that I would argue probably felt like they had a fair bit of autonomy, I was able to like peel back another layer of that. And I think often when we hire a team, there's like these different levels of delegation, right? And the very bottom level is that we're delegating the work. So it's like, I need you to check all of my social media groups this many times per day and respond to comments, right? It's like, we're just delegating the work. Then the next level is that we're delegating the decision-making along with the work. However, the third level is where we're delegating the decision-making, the work, and the weight of those decisions. And I think it's quite rare that we get to that level. And so what I've seen through my own experience and working with a lot of other entrepreneurs is that even if we're letting someone else make the decisions, like we're still feeling the clinch of what if it goes wrong? What if it doesn't work well? What if they made the wrong decision? Oh, I don't really like the way that they're doing it. And so we're still carrying like all of the emotional burden.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we truly want to extricate ourselves and free ourselves up, I would argue that emotional burden is just as great as like the doing the work. And so we think that we've freed ourselves up so much when we delegate someone to just do the work for us, but not really, because when we're still like a little bit stressed or a little bit on edge or a little bit attached to the way that they're doing it and which decisions are being made and making sure that the outcome is just so, it's like, we're not free to be the visionaries in our business. We're not free to pursue other projects. And so
and you're
that
so
was
right
the
about
level
that
I had to get
weight.
to.
Yeah, you're so right about that emotional weight. I talk a lot about that with entrepreneurs and time off. Give yourself the time off. Well, it's not time off if you're off and doing nothing for your business, but your head is going and you're beating yourself up for the time off that you're taking. You're feeling the emotional weight 100%. You're being crushed by the emotional weight. And I love that, you recognize that in the 3 tiers of decision making for employees of how they're going to do things. And it's so true. One of our other podcast guests that we had on, Michalowicz, who wrote Profit First.
Oh, yeah.
I loved his book Clockwork, because it was like, take 4 weeks off out of your business was his premise. And it was one of the things that he really, really helped me with my team was, I realized listening to his book, the epiphany that I had was I needed to give up the how the thing was done. And I needed to just focus on the end result. And as long as they had got there in an ethical, squeaky clean energy way, that they had got to the result, I had to stop being precious about that they ticked every one of my boxes and dotted every, but my way of doing it, because they may have another way of doing it. And as long as that was ethical and felt in alignment and congruent with the overall brand values and ethics, that was fine. And that was huge for me, because before I couldn't let that be like, they had to like, it was like paint by numbers, and Joanna will be hanging over your shoulder to make sure that the number 5, which is red, always gets painted red, like you can't change up the formula. Whereas that was such a huge thing to take myself out and go, okay, well, let's not worry about the how. Let's give this task to a member of staff and let them figure out the how of how they want to do it. And the other thing that really made super sense to me that he said, which I realized I was the bottleneck in my business, was he said, you've got to allow your people to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And then you've got to allow them to come to you and tell you that they've made a mistake, but you've got to resist the urge and the temptation to fix the mistake.
Yeah.
You got to say, okay, so how would you sort this? Like turning it back. And what's been really amazing is that, God, my team just brought it. They like absolutely brought it in that. And now I know that I've got a business where I'm no longer tied so deeply to it, because it does not need me for every tiny little decision. Every tiny little thing is not required. And I love that you find this way for your businesses, and so successfully that you were able to transition into the coaching. So let's talk about that transition into the coaching, because it sounds like it's been a wild ride. And you have had 2 retreats. Where have you had your retreats? Where have they been?
So we had one in Beverly Hills, California, and this like gorgeous architectural gem of a, probably a $10 million home up in the hills. It was gorgeous. And then we just did one in Breckenridge, Colorado, where we were able to enjoy the beautiful like mountain views with all of the fall colors. And yeah, it's,
Amazing.
It's been really wild. Like I go on these retreats and I'm like, how am I leading this? Like, it still doesn't totally feel real to me that I'm getting paid to do that. And it just makes me really excited for what's to come,
I love that.
Yeah. And I will say,
the thing is, you attract such amazing people. So then it's almost like, not only am I getting paid for this, but I'm getting to hang out with like literally the most awesome humans that I've ever met,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say, like, just totally keeping it real, the inner voice in my head that is not very helpful always feels like I should be further along by now. And so that happens still. It happens in this coaching business where it's like, I feel like I could hold more women in these containers than are enrolling. And I thought that 6 months in, I would be at a different revenue level than I am. And so, that game that we play inside of our heads, it still happens. So, again, it's not like we get to this exalted state where, everything's just unfolding perfectly for us, because, and this is actually something that I recognized I was doing. I think when we're in the feminine energy and we really are feeling co-creative and we're feeling like, our actions are very aligned with whatever inner guidance we received, my ego twisted that slightly. And what I was doing without realizing it was I was doing it the feminine energy way, with the expectation that that would result in the outcome that I wanted. Meaning, if I'm following the inner guidance, okay, if it really felt like a full body yes to do this retreat, and when I tap into the energy, it was like, yes, do it, then that must mean that this retreat is going to fill up. And it's like, well, that's my desire that I'm attaching to soul guidance. But when we think about what does our higher self want, our higher self is here for our evolution, right? It's here for our highest good, but my highest good might not be a full retreat. Even though that's what I want, my highest good might be holding the duality of being so grateful for the women that said yes, and really holding space and dreaming into what the retreat is going to look like and planning it for those women, and being able to hold the feelings of disappointment or lack of it not being what I thought it was going to be, right? That actually might be the most powerful thing for my own growth
in that moment.
Yes.
I love that. That is so powerful, because one of the things that I teach my people is that until we can walk with all of it, we don't get to walk with all of it, you
Yeah.
know? And if all of, and we think all of it is the result only, but
Yeah.
unless we can walk with the other side of it, like that we call it the law of duality, the law, it's a universal law, the law of duality. For every energy, there is an equal and opposite energy, which is really good news, because if you're having the worst day ever, it means that you could tap in potentially in that same moment in time to the best day ever, because the law of duality dictates that it exists in that moment too.
Yeah.
But it is a very, one of the things is that, I teach a lot of people how to tap into their intuitive and psychic gifts. And, one of the things that people were really surprised with is when I tell them that people who have held deep levels of depression can reach very, very high spiritual states. And people look at me and think, how? And because of the level of disconnection that they have experienced, they can also experience this same level of connection, because the law of duality dictates that. And I think, that's so beautiful to recognize that you can be sat there in all these beautiful, glamorous locations and hold both things. Because I really think that until we can walk with both in equal measure, we won't code for the reality that we want.
Yeah.
Up until that point, we're in training day to be able to hold both.
Yeah.
And it isn't until we can hold both do we code for the reality that we truly desire, because then we can handle it all. We can handle the other side of it, and we can handle when it all works out. And that's the thing that I love. And I love that you recognized being able to walk with both pieces, because I think that's such a huge thing. And it's one of the things that I think aggravates some of my students when I say to people, you're not ready till you're ready. And they're like, what does that mean? And I'm like, it literally means that you don't code for something in life until you're ready for it. You're just not ready until you're ready. Like, but when am I ready? And that's the question, right? And I ask the same question over and over again, but when will I be ready? But when will I be ready? And it's like, well, you're not ready till you're ready. And it is that moment. The moment that you're ready is the moment where you're actually able to hold anything and be good with it.
Yeah.
Nobody can show up. You're good with it. People show up. You're good with it. Well, now you're good with holding all of it. Because you're good with holding all of it, you are unattached now. So now your deepest desire, which is to hold lots of people, come in. And it's such a powerful, like, I love the dynamics of that. And I love that you recognize that, because a lot of people don't see that. They kind of, it kind of goes right over the top, and then they sit with the disappointment, and then they make it mean something. Well, I'm not good enough, or I wasn't smart enough, or my marketing was rubbish, or my thing was, what if it was all perfect? What if you just nailed absolutely everything and the whole thing was all set up for you so that you could hold the flip side, so that you could bring in your heart's desire on another occasion?
Totally. But it's hard for us to talk about, because of course there is that little voice that's like, what if it means that I'm not good enough? What will people think about me if they know this? Right?
That's it, right? That's it. It's like that little thing that just scratching, picking away at you, like, and it is, and that's the bravery, is to be able to hear that voice, say, thank you very much for your opinion. But here's what I'm going to choose to think instead. And it's that is, for me personally, it's been constant work. It's a daily thing. It's a daily choice I keep making, and I think that's the thing with mindset work. I think I remember once, and I shouldn't really laugh at this, but I find it hilariously funny, because I remember once exalting gratitude, because it's one of my favorite mindset practices ever. It's literally like the awesome sauce of the world. You can spread it on anything and it will literally make your most bitter experiences in life tastes better.
Yes.
And I remember putting, exalting this post on Facebook, and it's like gratitude is like amazing and things like that. And then this woman wrote this comment and she said, I tried that once, it didn't work for me.
Oh.
And I remember thinking, I was so tickled by it. It literally really, really made me laugh. And I was like, I tried showering once,
Right.
it didn't really work for me. It was like, well, how much did you stink before you got in the shower? And how long did you stay in there? And why did you not try it again? Because maybe
right.
you needed to keep going, and it's like, I think, and this is like, it is that lifetime work that we have to keep tapping in. And that to a lot of people is like, oh, well, gee, that sounds like a lot of work. Oh, gee, that sounds like, that doesn't sound that fun at all. But it doesn't have to be work. It can be fun. It can be a joyous process. It can be a beautiful unfolding of connecting with your own inner truth and seeing all of the pieces of you, the nervous Nelly piece of you that is nervous and thinks, oh my God, piece of you, and witnessing her and seeing her as beautiful. And then it's really gorgeous to see the piece of you that's more confident and says, no, we got this, let's do this. That's beautiful too. But why does only the palatable pieces get to be beautiful? Like, what I love in the journey is that it all gets to be gorgeous, that all of it gets to be this rich tapestry that makes us, and I often, the way that you talked about you're human, and one of the things that I love is that's been one of the ways for me to really tap in. Like, I literally love my human so much, and I really, really feel like she is one of the most hilarious women on the planet. She does some really funky shit. She has some really funky thoughts. But she is literally hilarious. It's like, the sky's on fire, the sky is falling, my hair's on fire. And it's like, no, Joanna, it's just a thing. And it's like being able to observe all that and appreciate that as well. Because I do appreciate that now that I'm further down my spiritual journey. I can look at that and think, actually, you know what? I'm actually really funny when I'm freaking out.
Totally.
And it doesn't stop. I just think we just get more badass at navigating it.
Yeah.
And the more easily that we can step out of ourselves and become that observer of the self.
Yes. The
easier it is on our nervous system. The easier it is on the nerves, the easier it is on the nervous system to realize, like, oh, actually, that's my human pulling some really, really funny stuff right now. And I can like laugh at that piece of me and hold that too and be like, right, okay. And then we can tap more into that soul self.
Yeah.
Where is guided and connected and has the guidance and stuff like that. But we can still hold this beautiful space for a human. And I think a lot of people try to live an either or life.
Yeah.
Which, and then they code for massive disappointment like that, because when their human kicks in, they're disappointed that they're not more evolved.
Yeah.
I love that my human's not that evolved. I love that she's a judgy bitch sometimes.
Right.
I love all these pieces because they're also me.
Yeah.
And I get to absorb all of them.
Yeah.
And they also make the contrast, because often it's my human that's holding the contrast for when I'm really, really tapped into my soul and everything is in alignment. Everything is beautiful. And then I have this, like, looks like she's been dragged through a bush backwards human. that like provides this incredible contrast for when everything is working out.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we're here to have a human experience. So it's amazing how much we resist that. And I resisted it for a long time. I just realized recently that I've been meditating for 20 years. And it's really interesting to think about, because it wasn't until, somewhat recently, in the last 3 years, that I started doing the work on my human, that it really all made it work. I've had some deep, incredible experiences in meditation, and I thought that I was integrating them. But now I look back on it and it's like, I was actually just really trying to bypass the human experience a lot. And now that I love my human so much, and I've done a lot of work on her and like reparenting my inner child, it's like the whole thing works so much better and the human experience is much more pleasant. And it's also, it's the reason that I love money too. Like, because we are having this 3D experience. And I always say, thank you, money, because like if money wasn't such an enticing carrot, we wouldn't do half of this shit. Like,
Yes, 100%. Like, how boring would life be without money? Like, money is, I mean, I see money as an extension of magic. It is the physical incarnation of what we would describe as the intangible magic. And it is. And, money is magic. Having money is magic. Lack of magic is poops. Lack of money is poops. It's not fun, right?
No.
But yet it is also such an incredible carrot, like you said. It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
If I was like, look, we need to like really go through some painful stuff. We need to like really get into your subconscious and like look at a lot of stuff that's in there that's going to feel horrible. But on the other side of it, you're going to feel a little bit more joy. Most people would be like, I'm good. Like, I feel joyful enough. If you said we're going to do that and on the other side is $1 million, people are like, all right, let's dig right in. Like, when do we start?
Let me get my spade.
That's right. Yes. And so it's like when we can be a little bit more playful and like thank money for being the impetus for us to do this inner work and for us to like grow and evolve as humans and, to be more connected to our soul. It's like, yeah, great. Let's pursue money together. Let's do it. Doesn't that sound amazing?
I love it. And I think, a lot of people, I mean, I think for many people, it takes a lot to get to a place where they can actually admit that they love money, because so many of us are coded for the love-hate relationship of money.
Oh yeah.
But actually it's the lack of money that we actually hate. It's not money. When we have it, we're good. We're okay. It's kind of fun.
So true.
But what we create is this love-hate relationship. But actually what we hate is the lack. We hate to be in lack. And, as divine beings of endless source, the endless power of source, the endless power of energy that is our birthright, of course lack feels rubbish. Of course lack does not feel good, because we're not even anywhere remotely close to the truth of who we are, which is this endless source that has an endless abundance, has an endless source. And, and I feel like it's so funny how many people have this relationship, and it takes a long time sometimes for human to actually realize, what, I kind of really love money, and to be able to say it in such a pure way, like a child says, I love ice cream, like that kind of way, but to say I love money, without any attachment to the money, because the attachment that we have most is the attachment to the lack. And that's what creates that love-hate. That's what creates that idea that money is evil or money is bad in some way. What's bad is when we feel in lack. And when humans are in abundance, we feel good. We naturally gravitate towards our own natural generosity. I think humans are very generous. Much of the time they're very generous, but the lack is what pinches off the generosity. When you've got plenty of money, it's some of the most generous people I've ever met is people who have, massive amounts of wealth. They're generous with their information. They're generous with their time. They're generous even with money or resources, but most often they're just a generous energy. And that's because they're no longer in the frequency of lack. And that's one of the, reasons we obviously share that passion, to help other people tap into that endless source of money, to release themselves from that place and to be able to actually tell the truth, which is I love money. because you love what it can do for you. You love the doors that it can open. You love the experiences that it can give you. And that's what I think is such a powerful thing. And I think so many people, it's such a taboo subject. Oh God, you must be terrible for loving money. And it's like, do you love a good time? And they go, yes. Like, well, a lot of good times take money. Whether it's a house that you're in because you're hanging out with friends, whether it's a hike that you're on, but like it would be kind of awkward to be on a hike completely naked in the forest with your friends, because it's like money was there in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. And I recently developed a money wounds quiz. It's free. And so it's part of this bigger body of work of really identifying and healing our money wounds. And yeah, I love it too. It feels really powerful because I think often it's like if we can't totally name something, it makes it a little harder to heal it. Not impossible, of course, but when we can pinpoint like, oh yeah, it really is this conditioning around scarcity with money that's making me reject it, right? And I'm creating a story around the people that have it that's really unhelpful because my story is that they're greedy or whatever, understanding what that money wound is so you can name it and you can start to see when it's the wound talking and the wound running the show for you instead of your sovereign being or your infinite soul, as you say, who of course wants infinite resources, then, we can really move the ball forward and start to reclaim our desire and our love for all resources, money included.
That's gorgeous. I hope that we can get the link for that for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we'll pop it in the show notes. Now, we probably could talk for hours and hours and hours, but tell people where they can find you on the interwebs, Emily, so that people can connect with you really quickly. If they've listened to this interview, they've been really inspired. They're like, oh my God, I got to check this lady out. Where's your favorite places to hang on the internet? And we'll make sure we'll pop that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm on Facebook, Emily June Wilcox. I'm on Instagram at mmakesmoney. So those are the two places you'll find me hanging out the most. And I would love to connect with you there. And then if you want to take the Money Wounds quiz, you can just go to moneywoundsquiz.com. And it's 6 powerful questions that helps you to see what wounds you have and set you on the path to healing.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. And I'm excited to see what's going to unfold next for you and just see how it's all going to unfold. But it's been really beautiful. I loved hearing about your other businesses and your journey and everything. So thank you so much for joining us today on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Joanna.
You are so welcome.